Did you know that at the end of the 1950s, almost a third of Soviet families in the cities lived in kommunalkas or barracks? 5 or 6 people could live in one room, with no facilities and a shared toilet on the floor. After the war, the country was in ruins. Factories were being launched, industry was growing, but people still lived without comfort in cramped quarters and constant queues to the bathroom. The authorities realized that if they did not give people separate housing quickly, there would be a social explosion. It was necessary to build millions of flats, and as soon as possible. That's when Nikita Khrushchev decided, let's build simply, cheaply, quickly, and a lot. This is how the idea of Khrushchev's apartments appeared, small, homotypical, but their own. It was not a luxury, but a solution to the problem of survival. The new housing was not distinguished by convenience, but for the first time, each family got a separate flat with its own kitchen, toilet, and bathroom. People did not believe that it was possible. After communal housing, it seemed a real miracle. The houses were designed as prefabricated models. The first model house was assembled like a constructor in 12 days. Panels were made at the factory, and at the construction site they were simply assembled by crane-like cubes. Such technologies made it possible to build thousands of houses simultaneously all over the country. Kruschevki became a symbol of hope, albeit temporary. Surprisingly, it was this temporariness that later became one of the main problems. Architects did not expect these houses to stand for decades. However, they not only stood, they became a legend. These temporary houses have been standing for more than 60 years, 2.5 times longer than planned. And it also turned out that in some cities, Khrushchevs have survived even the new buildings of 2000s, built with violations. Khrushchevs look like 2 drops of water on the outside, but the main thing is what is inside. Many people still remember their first flat in Kruschovka. It was cramped, noisy, but it was their own. The most important thing to know is that Khrushchevs were built as simply and cheaply as possible. They used inexpensive materials, concrete panels, plaster, cheap plank floors. Not because they could not do otherwise, the goal was the same: to give millions of people at least some housing. No frills, everything was strictly according to the norm, according to the blueprint. No one looked at design and comfort. Have you ever wondered why you can hear your neighbors so well in Kruschevka houses? It's simple. The thickness of walls in panel houses is only 10 to 12 centimeters. Such walls did not keep heat and sound well, but allowed to build quickly and cheaply. The ceilings were made thin, so steps from above could be heard clearly. But the main blow on convenience was, of course, the kitchen. Kitchens were tiny, only 5 to 6 square meters. There was a hob, a sink, and a small table. The refrigerator often did not fit in, so it was put in the corridor or even in the room. The rooms are adjoining, passageway, or separate but always small. Kruschevka flats are tiny, but with clever economy. Every meter was used as efficiently as possible. Even narrow corridors were made not for nothing, but to leave more space for living rooms. They created a new way of life. People learned to live in tight quarters, but without neighbors behind the curtain. And that was a huge step forward. And yet, despite the thin walls, tiny kitchens, and cramped rooms, most people who got a Kruschevka were truly happy. In the 60s, about 1 million families moved into Kruschevkas every year. It was a record for the scale of settlement. There was no such thing in any country in the world, and the housing was given out for free. The queue was long, but when your day came, it was a real holiday. Many people remember how the whole neighborhood was invited to the housewarming party. They boiled borscht, baked pies, drank tea from simple cut glasses. They put furniture in the cramped but dear rooms. People rejoiced not at wallpaper or plumbing. They rejoiced at the beginning of a new life. For the generation of 50s and 60s, Kruschevka became a symbol of personal freedom. For the first time in decades, Getting a flat in the USSR was not just an improvement of conditions, it was a social lift, a step from poverty to a normal life. In some regions, people waited 15 to 20 years for their Kruschovka. Even divorced couples continued to live together in a communal flat until one of them got a Kruschovka. And here arises a logical question. How did the country manage to move millions of people from barracks and communal flats to separate flats in such a short time? After all, we are not talking about dozens or even hundreds of houses. Whole districts were built, literally in a few months. It's hard to believe, but in the USSR, flats were actually built so quickly that it sometimes took less than a week for one flat to be completed. And this is not an exaggeration. This was the real result of the Soviet construction system, which worked like clockwork. What is the secret? It's simple. Khrushchevs were not built brick by brick like before. They were assembled from ready-made concrete panels, as if from a constructor. These panels were made at special factories, and at the stage of production, windows, pipes, and even electrical wiring were put into them. The panels were brought to the construction site by lorries, lifted by crane, and connected to each other. The flat was literally put together in a few days. The crews worked in a flow method. While some were assembling the panels, others were sealing the joints, and others were connecting the communications. This approach was called industrial house building. It was a revolution in Soviet construction. It used to take years to build a house, but now a whole entrance could be assembled in a month. And this despite the fact that there were only a few teams working. There was no need to wait for the concrete to harden, no need to adjust every detail by hand. Everything was already ready in advance. This approach made it possible to make housing not elite, but the norm. Almost every urban family in the 60s and 70s got a chance for their own flat. What is surprising is that despite the cramped quarters, thin walls, and identical flats, there was a special atmosphere in the Khrushchev flats, the one that is most missed today. People didn't just live next to each other, they lived together. Neighbors knew each other by name, communicated every day, helped, shared. It was almost one big family. If someone was sick, neighbors brought soup. If someone was doing repairs, they gave tools. No one was left alone. In some houses, neighbors organized common dinners. Tables were brought out right in the yard, salads were prepared, pies were baked. Somebody brought an accordion, somebody brought a kettle, and they sat down to the evening in a human way. And the children lived like a pack. The yard was their territory, and the parents didn't worry. All the neighbors looked after all the children. If a child messed up, they found out about it faster than they could get home. The older boys made sure that the younger ones didn't climb on construction sites or dabble on the roads. And the adults trusted them completely. Nowadays, it is hard to imagine such a thing. People got used to being around each other, to support each other, because they realized that everyone's comfort depended on it. Life in Kruschovka taught the generation of Soviet people to appreciate not only the walls, but also the relationships between people. The atmosphere of neighborliness in Kruschevka houses became an important part of the culture of Soviet life, not just a background for living. In some areas of Moscow, residents installed benches, flower beds, and even made playgrounds for children themselves without any help from the state. And here an interesting question arises. Khrushchevki was originally conceived as a temporary dwelling for a maximum of 25 years. Simple materials, minimal technology, no architectural sophistication. But more than half a century has already passed, and these houses not only continue to stand, but are actively inhabited. So what is the secret of their vitality? The answer is simple, but unexpected. For all their simplicity, Khrushchevs turned out to be structurally very stable. The panels were fastened with strong cement mortar. The foundations were made to the best of their ability. And although the materials were inexpensive, safety was not played with. Too many people were relocated, and it was impossible to risk their lives. One of the factors of durability was a simple and clear construction. No complex assemblies, tricky solutions, or design frills. A minimum of parts means a minimum of breakdowns. There are real cases when paneled Kruschovkas survived even earthquakes. For example, in Tashkent in 1966, many buildings were damaged, but the Khrushchevs remained standing. They were not considered particularly strong, but the facts speak for themselves. The longevity of the Khrushchevs is not a mistake, but the result of a simple but honest approach to construction. These houses did not fall apart because people lived in them, took care of them, repaired them, insulated them, and prolonged their life with their own hands. It would seem that Kruschevka houses have long become obsolete, small, noisy, without a lift, without normal noise insulation. All around, new houses, apartment complexes, modern layouts. But people are in no hurry to move, so it's not just about walls and meters. It's something else. Let's find out. Is it just nostalgia for youth, or is there really something special about Khrushchevki? Let's start with the most practical thing: location. Khrushchevki were built in the 1950s to 60s, when cities were not overloaded yet. Therefore, most of these houses stand in convenient neighborhoods. There is everything: schools, clinics, shops in walking distance. In new neighborhoods, there are often bare wastelands for years, and here everything is at hand. That is why in many neighborhoods the prices for Kruschovka houses are not falling, but even growing. People buy them not for the walls, but for a place in which it is convenient to live. The second point is the atmosphere. Despite the age of the houses, the same neighbors have often lived in Kruschovka houses for decades. Here everyone knows each other, says hello, helps each other. In new buildings, there is no such thing. There is anonymity, temporary tenants, and often complete indifference. It is also interesting that many Khrushchevs have already gone through major repairs, insulation, replacement of communications. And inside, coziness, repairs, built-in wardrobes, kitchenettes, where each shelf is made for yourself. Yes, it is cramped, but it is comfortable in its own way. People inhabited this space, and it became a part of their lives. Kruschevka is not just a dwelling, but a part of the family's personal history, which one does not want to give away, even in exchange for better. For many old people, and even for the middle generation, Kruschovka is a comfort zone where everything is familiar, understandable, and truly their own. In Moscow and St. Petersburg, the prices for Kruschovka flats in convenient districts are comparable to the prices for flats in new buildings. What awaits Kruschovka next? Demolition, remodeling, or a second life? What is actually more profitable, to build new or to save the old? And what do you think about it? Write in the comments.